Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the second lecture on language and gender. This is the first lecture video. Just simply to link with the previous lecture, I would like to start with just simply a few basic comments, and then we will move towards today's lecture. So we last week we noticed that we talked about the differences from three different angles. One was Lakoff's concept of deficit approach, and then there was a dominance approach and differences approach. So these three approaches that we discussed last week, we will continue with dominance approach actually. So somehow or the other, they are trying to explain the phenomenon of differences somehow. But how do we approach differences? There may be various ways. One way of approaching a difference, there are differences because one is deficit, one has deficiency in language. For example, if you say women have some deficiency in their speech, in their use of language, so definitely this deficiency also refers to some kind of differences, but this is something negative, that you consider that women language is deficient. It means you are giving them a kind of negative approach you are using. Anyways, Lakoff's approach, that was somehow it reflects differences but from the deficit point of view. And then the dominance approach which somehow relates to the dominance of male speech. So it refers to superiority in male speech. Somehow or the other, we may consider deficit approach and dominance approach same way. The third approach, the difference approach by Tanin, this actually somehow we consider it more democratic, where even if there are differences, for example, if we talk about differences, it does not mean that we mean one is inferior and other is superior, right? Even if you are comparing two mobile phones, if you are comparing two chairs, if you are comparing two television set, does not necessarily mean that you are going to describe the weaknesses of one, and you are going to describe the strengths of the other. Rather, we may view it just simply as having some differences. Okay, if I say we have some differences between differences Mr. ABC and differences between Mr. XYZ, so I can talk about ABC and XYZ in terms of differences. One is more punctual, one is doing this, the other is, I mean, although he's less punctual, but he understands the concepts very easily and explains them like so. Differences does not necessarily mean to describe the weaknesses of one and strengths of the other. Today we are going to talk about this Tanin's concept of differences. We will start with this. Okay, difference theory. Tanin believes the difference starts in childhood. Almost in every culture, it's same. If I think about Pakistani culture, I'm sure there are differences. Same, I suppose, are here in Saudi Arabia, where parents use more words about feelings to girls and use more verbs to boys. Boys are more, I mean, right from childhood, they are mainly connected with activity, with verbs. Verbs actually reflect activity. So there are more verbs about boys, and for girls, more feelings, which are normally used for, sorry, they are normally used through adjectives. So males and female belong to different subcultures, right? Different subcultures within one single culture, say Arabic culture, Western culture, or even Pakistani culture, whatever culture you say, or within household culture, if you say. So there are certain differences within subculture. Subculture where male and female have differences, we can talk about, and therefore speak differently because these differences, if I just simply highlight it for you, these differences of male and female, why they speak differently? Because they belong to two different subcultures. To understand this concept of culture is all your activity, all your being, what you do, what you think, that is part of your culture, what you believe is part of your culture. That's why religion is part of your culture. What you eat, that is part of your culture. What you dress, you can see women are different in eating habits. Usually boys, men, they are more fond of eating. It's my observation, maybe it's wrong, but at least very obviously they wear different dresses, they have different opinions. All these things belong to culture, right? So men and women, even though overall culture like Arabic or Pakistani culture, they are over part of overall culture, but within this overall culture there is a subculture where male and female have their own differences. So women, I mean, they wear more colorful dresses everywhere, almost everywhere, even in the West here or anywhere. So this is part of their subculture, right? So her book, you don't understand. These two examples, although they were already used, so I did not change them. However, you will get better examples to get this concept. So if we say her book, the very word her shows the description of a female, right? And you don't understand, this is a very characteristic of male speech, where they try to assert whatever their opinion is, they try to assert and they try to impose on others as well, right? So these two might be viewed from these two subcultures. Okay, claims that there are 6 main differences between the ways male and female use language. Let's see what those differences are. So here we have 6 differences. Status versus sport. Men see language as means of asserting dominance. Dominance means ghalib, right? So somehow or the other, when men speak, they use language, they try to assert their dominance in any field, be it sports, be it some kind of shopping, online shopping. If men are talking, they would try to present that they have more knowledge, so they are somehow they would try to dominate the discussion. But women see it as a way of confirming sporting ideas. So when they are going to talk about, even if it's online shopping sort of idea, so they tend to be more. For example, if one woman says nowadays online shopping is growing, the other women would say, I mean, would confirm, most probably they will confirm or support the idea. Yes, maybe because people have more time, that's why they are spending, I mean, and they have internet facilities, that's why they prefer to purchase online. If men have this kind of, one says more people are buying online, so other one say, oh yes, they have become idle, they don't want to go, but I prefer to go and purchase from the shops. So somehow you would find some kind of differences. Maybe this example is not very much accurate, but still differences are there, where men are more about status, right? Whatever they say, they tend to see to assert things through their dominance in language. But women, mainly they are conforming or sporting the ideas. Independence versus intimacy. Men go it alone, which simply shows independence. Whatever opinion they have got, they can say, and they can choose any conflicting idea. Even if there are 3 4 5 people sitting, one can, I mean, communicate an idea which is the other people don't accept, still men would prefer to go it alone. While women, they seek support. If they notice that the other women don't like this, they would tend to change it. So this was the second point. Third point, advice versus understanding. Men see language as problem solving, right? For them, whatever issue comes, they tend to give more solutions. Women see it as means of empathy. For example, if in male discussion, if someone says, Oh, these days I have a headache. I have pain in my head. I have headache these days. So men, most probably they would tend to say, "Did you go to see a doctor?" or "Have you been proper sleep?" Like this. And women, maybe they would tend to use this as an empathy that, oh, when it's a pain in your head, definitely you can't do anything, you don't feel like doing anything. So this kind of empathy they will be showing more, while men, they will try to consider it as a problem, and they would suggest certain advices, pieces of advice, and some suggestions for its solution. Information versus feeling. Male are concerned with the facts, women with emotions. Well, because I suppose that men have more exposure. Right from childhood, children, I mean, boys are allowed to go out. So they have first hand experience of life more than women normally have. For maybe for that reason, and men are more, you might have seen at homes, men, if they are free, they would watch TV for news and sports sort of things, where from news or newspaper they read more regularly than women. It is generally, I mean, my observation. So they seek more information. Women, they are more concerned with emotions and feelings. And where do you get this? Through TV dramas, movies, or novel reading, these things. Then, orders versus proposals. Men use imperatives. Imperatives like, I need this, give me this, bring it, close the door. These are imperatives. But women, they use hidden directives. For example, sometimes if they have to ask the other women, so instead of saying something directly, they would be using indirect ways, which are actually more polite. So, in other words, we can say women directives are more polite. I gave you one example sometime, I don't know in which lecture, but I gave you, for example, if somebody has to say, close the door, this is very much direct, and this is a directive, imperative, and very much direct, can only be used with people of inferior status or with very close friends. So you cannot say your teacher, close the door, please. So there are various ways. The one of very indirect way was, you could recall to your mind, it's very cold inside. Nothing about door has been mentioned, but still the listener would understand it, that I am asked, I am requested to close the door. So these are female or women will be using such hidden directives. Conflict versus compromise. Men will argue. Once you argue, in Arabic you call this dalil. Once you argue, you are actually in a conflict, because there will be counter arguments, right? But still, men would happily face those arguments and counter arguments. But women, on the other hand, will try to find a middle ground. If men say, for example, um, which example? Should I give you any example? Men will argue, for example, men may argue that most of the governments in the world um, did not handle coronavirus situation very well. That's why it's spreading. So this is a kind of argument, and there will be counter argument. No, no, the governments are very much alive, but they could not handle it because people are not cooperating. And then there will be some more. It is the responsibility of the government that they should ask the people first, and then if they don't understand, then the force must be applied. This is how there will be argument and counter argument, which men may go. Women, if they happen to if they are in such a situation, they will try to find middle ground. For example, it's the responsibility of both governments and the public that they should stay at home, and they should cooperate with the government. Like this is a kind of middle ground in which responsibility is given to both. This is how you would find differences theory on these 6 major points. Norms of women's talk. Uh, uh, okay, I think instead of making this video even more heavier, I stop here and you will find the further information in the next video. Thank you very much for staying with us.